Hello, my name is Jessica, and thank you for coming to my presentation in Track 2 Pedagogy on measuring the effectiveness of academic videos for incidental vocabulary learning in ESL Foundation learners. So let's start with an introduction to what this research was about. Vocabulary knowledge plays a crucial role in the development of language skills such as reading, speaking, listening, and writing, and it often determines academic achievements and successful learning in higher education. And research in the Malaysian context has shown that ESL learners have insufficient vocabulary for higher education, and the limited growth through explicit teaching of vocabulary suggests that opportunities to acquire new words should be provided to these students through an innovative vocabulary learning strategy. As a result, incidental vocabulary learning through audiovisual input such as television shows and movies recently emerged to be an effective way to learn vocabulary. However, the extent to which academic videos such as Khan Academy or TED Talk shows are effective for learning vocabulary has not yet been explored. So, as academic videos are accessible, cost and time efficient, and often used in teaching to make lessons more personalized and interactive, it was deemed necessary to investigate how academic videos could encourage efficient and effective vocabulary learning. Research also suggests that individual differences between learners may affect the process of language acquisition and the effectiveness of incidental vocabulary learning. So, these were considered as factors that may affect the extent to which incidental vocabulary learning may occur through watching academic videos. And the findings from this research may provide an insight for TESOL educators on how teaching practices using academic videos may address problems of low vocabulary knowledge in ESL students. So this presentation will consist of 4 sections, starting with the background and objectives, methodology, results, and ending with the discussion and conclusion. As I have mentioned in the short introduction, incidental vocabulary learning through audiovisual input has recently emerged as an effective way to learn vocabulary. And incidental vocabulary learning occurs as a byproduct while performing a meaning-focused activity. So it's a subconscious process, and it involves the learner's ability to guess and acquire new words from contextual clues through what they believe is correct. And this knowledge is likely to be receptive knowledge, meaning that they're able to recognize the word form and meaning, knowing what the word looks and sounds like, but they won't necessarily be able to pronounce or spell these words. So previous research has found that viewing of television shows and in the second language may lead to substantial vocabulary gains of approximately 4 words or 14% increase in meaning recognition. And likewise, viewing a documentary also had significant impact on word learning, 2.97 words on average, and also, watching a single movie with second language captions provided a modest increase in students' ability to recall words of 1.77 or 4.2% of words. And there are theories that help understand the effectiveness of incidental vocabulary learning through audiovisual input. So the multimedia principle, which was proposed by Mayer, suggests that people learn better through both words and pictures. And this is because the brain selects and integrates information from the elements of the multimedia presentation to construct verbal and pictorial schemas. And likewise, the dual coding theory also outlines that words and meanings are processed in 2 independent but connected channels. So the verbal code processes forms of language such as speech, and the nonverbal code processes our knowledge of the world through imagery. And the links between these 2 codes allowed for the decoding of words. And therefore, both of these theories suggest that multiple simultaneous inputs of auditory, written, and pictorial elements that are shown in videos can improve learning and acquisition of meaningful vocabulary. And this is because learners are able to coordinate language input better and manage their working memory by using their background knowledge, vocabulary, and comprehension strategies. So this then leads to our next focus, which is the individual differences of abilities of learners that are commonly recognized as factors that significantly impact the learning process. So the factors that were investigated in this study were comprehension, prior vocabulary knowledge, and working memory. And this is because they're often found to be significant predictors of incidental vocabulary learning. So firstly, the input hypothesis states that languages are acquired by receiving comprehensible input, and the meaning of new words are derived from context. This means that the extent to which a learner incidentally acquires vocabulary through watching videos rely on their understanding of the video content. And the Matthew effect also suggests that a cumulative advantage, so the rich get richer, where one's vocabulary knowledge facilitates comprehension and comprehension skills facilitate vocabulary learning. And another factor contributing to incidental vocabulary learning is the learner's prior vocabulary knowledge. So, for most learners to gain an adequate understanding of text without assistance, they need approximately 98% of the words to be known from the text. So, for general audiovisual input, prior vocabulary knowledge was found to be a significant factor, accounting for 19% of the variance in meaning recognition post-test after viewing television shows. And it led to more sizable vocabulary gains as they were able to easily notice the unknown words from the video. And lastly, working memory. Working memory was found to predict the number of words picked up from the video or audiovisual input, as those who had higher working memory capacity were able to pick up more new words. And as working memory is heavily involved in the language acquisition process, further insight must be provided into how a learner's working memory may influence the extent to which incidental vocabulary learning occurs through watching academic videos. So, studies suggest that incidental vocabulary learning through audiovisual input is an effective strategy, but it's not yet been explored in the context of academic videos. So, given that academic videos are often used in higher education and they differ from general audiovisual input such as television shows and movies because they complement learning objectives, they contain relevant content, they contain specific academic vocabulary, and they're shorter in time. So, it's necessary to understand the effects of academic videos on incidental vocabulary learning for second language learners. So consequently, two research questions were explored. Number one, to what extent does watching academic videos enable incidental vocabulary learning for ESL learners in higher education? And research question two, to what extent could comprehension, prior vocabulary knowledge, and working memory predict the number of words learned incidentally through academic videos for ESL learners in higher education? So moving on to the methodology, this study adopted a quantitative methodology with a repeated measures design for replicability and to ensure that the participants served as their own controls. For the participants, convenience sampling was used to select 56 ESL students from Foundation in Arts and Education and Sciences from a private international university in Malaysia. All participants were second language English students, and they had a variety of first languages, but they had a minimum English proficiency equivalent to CEFR B2 or 6.0 scored on the IELTS exams. The academic video that was selected for this research was a 10-minute crash course video on social influence, and this was because it complemented the learning objectives for the foundation students' core module by providing additional academic context to expand the learner's understanding and engagement. So from this video, 20 target words were selected. These were all relevant to understanding the content of the video and were selected from with equal ratio of parts of speech. And they were identified using the British National Corpus. And these words were also selected from a range of frequency levels, mid to low, of 3,000 bands and above, as participants were deemed to likely have mastered the most frequent 2,000 words in the English language before attending an English medium university. So the research instruments that were used in this study were all transferred to an online platform for accessibility and efficiency, and they were conducted through a survey website called Qualtrics. And a vocabulary size test was used to measure receptive vocabulary size through form meaning recognition in a 4 options multiple choice format. It was modified to consist 5 randomly selected items from each 3rd to 14th frequency level, and this was to reduce fatigue in participants due to the extensive use of tests in this study specifically. So the target words test was used as a pretest before and a post-test after watching the video, and it contained the 20 target words that were selected from the video in the same 4-option multiple choice format as the vocabulary size test, and all the options were from the 1st to 3rd frequency level. The pretest was incorporated into the modified vocabulary size test, which acted as a distractor to prevent participants from identifying the target words while watching the video. Next, the comprehension test consisted of 10 questions. There were 5 multiple choice questions and 5 short answer questions, and they were all based on factual information that were explicitly stated in the video. Next, an online reading span task was used to measure working memory, as a study found that a verbal executive control component had the strongest correlation with receptive vocabulary knowledge. So this task required participants to memorize words while comprehending sentences, and this was to see how individuals can engage in activity while facing distractions, which reflected their ability to control attention and thoughts. And all the tests that were used in this study were deemed reliable, as the convex alpha were reported to be 0.7 or higher. So the procedure, participants took part in this research as a group through an online platform of Microsoft Teams across 2 weeks in 2 sessions of the regular lecture hours in their core module. So in the first session, the consent forms and information sheets were received, and the participants took a series of tests, including the modified vocabulary size test, watching the academic video, and then completing the post-target words test, followed by the comprehension test. And to prevent fatigue or boredom that may cause participants to guess or not complete the tests at all, the reading span task was completed on another day during the second session. Throughout the sessions, participants were encouraged to follow their usual study habits, and so they were given the freedom to participate through various devices, through on their phones or on their laptops, use headphones, or take notes while watching the video. The results were analyzed through descriptive and inferential statistics. So for the first research question, determining the effectiveness of academic videos for incidental vocabulary learning, it was found that there was an average gain for participants of 0.78 or 3.9% of the target words after watching the 10-minute academic video once. And there was a total gain of 44 words by all the participants. And after checking if the data fit the assumptions, a paired sample t-test was conducted, and it showed a statistically significant difference in the pretest and the post-test scores, with the median effect size and confidence interval showing practical significance. So therefore, null hypothesis was rejected, and findings suggested that watching academic videos enabled incidental vocabulary learning for ESL learners in this study. For the next research question, to see the relationship between vocabulary gains from viewing the academic video and the predictive variables, which are vocabulary size, comprehension, and working memory, Searsman's correlation was conducted, but it showed no statistically significant relationship between vocabulary gain and the predictive variables. And this was further confirmed through a regression analysis, which also showed that the predictive variables did not explain the variance in the vocabulary gained. So the results suggested that incidental vocabulary learning occurs from watching academic videos for ESL learners in higher education, but we did not find evidence for learner-related factors to be significant predictors of the absolute vocabulary gain from watching the academic videos. So the findings show a relatively lower average gain of words compared to previous research. However, it's still consistent in revealing that incidental vocabulary learning occurs from viewing audiovisual input, and that simultaneous auditory, written, and pictorial elements actually improve vocabulary learning. And unlike previous studies that propose that when a word occurs more frequently in the video, it's more likely to be noticed, this study suggested no common pattern that was observed between the frequency of occurrence and the vocabulary gained from the participants. And lastly, the findings from the study differs from previous studies which found predictor variables to be accountable for the variance in vocabulary gained, where learners were with higher ability actually had more incidental learning vocabulary gains. So, possible explanation for these differences between previous studies and this study may be due to the longer viewing of videos of approximately 60 minutes and substantial number of unknown target words in previous studies compared to this study where only a short video of 10 minutes was used and there were only 20 target words. And having subsequent comprehension tasks after watching the video could possibly lead to greater vocabulary gains, as reading is actually a slow and error-prone process, and it requires large amount of input and exposure to target words before actually acquiring the vocabulary. The participants in this study may have had limited unknown target words to potentially learn from the video, as they knew an average of 8,900 word families compared to participants in previous studies who only know 2,000 to 3,000 words. And lastly, receptive vocabulary tests are relatively easy, and participants can score high on these tests regardless of whether their working memory capacity is high or low, which may have led to an absence in correlation. So now moving on to the limitations and recommendations. There were a few limitations that could be outlined for this study. Firstly, participants in this study were from an English medium university, and this means that their vocabulary size was deemed adequate to comprehend the second language input from the academic video. So this means that they may not have been representative of the higher education ESL students in Malaysia who have insufficient vocabulary knowledge. And so different patterns may be found for lower proficiency learners. And next, pre-target words were tested, and it revealed that the participants scored a mean of 15.3 out of 20 of the target words, which means that 96% of the participants knew at least half of the target words prior to even watching the video. So this suggests that potential vocabulary gains may have been limited due to the ceiling effect. And future studies should be conducted where they would select more target words from the video or collect data on the acquisition of words other than the target words that were selected. And lastly, the academic video was only viewed once with limited exposure to target words, and there was only one immediate post-test which was conducted. And this means that it may not represent vocabulary learned over time. And also, this may not reflect authentic flipped classroom situations where students are actually able to extensively view and participate in tasks such as note-taking or discussions to aid their comprehension and learning of vocabulary. So, further research is necessary to be conducted using delayed post-tests and investigate whether incidental vocabulary learning is mediated by word characteristics other than the frequency of occurrence, and also additional classroom tasks such as comprehension or additional vocabulary tasks to support classroom learning. So in conclusion, this study provides an insight into the limited understanding of incidental vocabulary learning through viewing academic videos and the effect of learner-related factors for ESL learners in higher education. And this indicates that vocabulary is learned at the foreign meaning recognition level. And unlike previous studies that explored audiovisual inputs such as TV shows, documentaries, and movies, this study explored incidental vocabulary learning through short academic videos, which is an innovative approach to incidental vocabulary development, and it can be easily used in teaching to complement learning objectives and encourage personalized learning. So this implies that academic videos may be a beneficial tool to address problems of low vocabulary knowledge in higher education L2 learners. However, further research is warranted to further understand incidental vocabulary learning through academic videos and explore factors that may affect the extent to which vocabulary is learned, to continue to provide TESOL educators insight into how academic videos can be integrated into classroom practices to improve vocabulary learning in various ESL learners. So here's a poster that summarizes all the findings. Thank you for listening, and please feel free to ask any questions.